Hello, and welcome to Stop Now, a social experiment where we stop, listen, and share. I am Nate, and I am so glad to be back with everyone this week. We've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, a lot of interesting things. Before I bring on our esteemed guest this week, let me bring on the man running things, the voice of the voiceless himself, JK. JK, how are you, my friend?
Hi Nate, I'm good. And a surprise thing, this week, I have a special guest, and we would all like to know more about him. And he is in your territory, so I'm just like going to have a backseat and cover up myself and listen carefully and watch you guys do the show.
Sounds good. So yes, and kind of pulling back the curtain before we started, Daniel and I were trying to remember, like, where I know you from somewhere. Like, where did we connect? Because everything is so blended together. I guess over the last year and a half. But it is good to be speaking to you again, Daniel. If you don't mind, introduce yourself and let the folks know a little bit about yourself.
Hey, the metaverse is going to fix all that, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I'm Dan Tweed, and at least that's how I spelled it on the ballot here in Thousand Oaks. The last two times I ran for city council, which were 2018 and 2020. So I actually doubled my vote count from 2,000 to 4,000, and I'm looking to run again in 2022. And if I can double my vote count again, I'll be on the council by 2026 if I can do this. And I'm keeping the money out of politics by not spending any. My platform is let's abandon the trench warfare that politics has been, saddled with for way too long, and let's run on ideas. Let's run on propositions. Let's run on quality progress. Let's make governance great again by making it softer and more human focused and more engaged and involved. I think cities are going to drive this process, because it looks like the national level leaders, they're all meeting at COP26 right now to fix the climate. And Greta Thunberg says, I'm done with politicians, they don't work, So I think people at the neighborhood and city level, we can fix this. We got this. And I'm just trying to come up with solutions and open source ideas that will facilitate that. So that's sort of an introduction. Next question.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to kind of a similarity that we share with the radio. But before we get to that, I definitely want to stay here for a second, because as some of the viewers know, I live in Virginia. And so for the last 6 months, we've just been like inundated with ads leading up to the election we recently had, for, against, super PACs and committees and councils and all of these things. And after a while, it just gets to the point where you're exhausted by the messaging and by a lot of people saying a lot of things in politics in these ads, but they're not saying much of substance. They're talking about what the other guy isn't doing versus what they're going to do. And so I'm wondering, like, what's your take on kind of the current state of politics, which is influenced, unfortunately, by a lot of capital and finance and money?
Yeah, great question. We hear all these promises from politicians, but really, do they have to? Is anyone going to sue them if they break their promise? No. Is there any accountability here going on? No. It's just a game of money and influence and good hair, and it's who's got the best soundbite, who's got the best commercial, who spent the most money. Ridiculous. This was not the way the American democracy experiment was envisioned by the founding fathers. In fact, they actually talked about sortition, which is kind of like, let's run government like jury duty. You get a letter in the mail. Oh, guess what? You get to be, city councilor for a year, or you're going to be president for a year, or something like that. There's a lot of ways to take the insiderism out of what should be total outsiderism. We're all outsiders trying to make it in nature, and this is kind of why I ran under some of the transhumanist party platform. The United States Transhumanist Party is about like health and science and super happiness and super longevity, and it's about confronting these oncoming technological singularity issues. You know, there's some people think we might be looking at you know, a runaway artificial general intelligence that can solve problems, you know, 1 billion times faster than humans. What's going to happen to humans when something like that gets loose on the scene? What's going to happen to history as we know it when things like nanobots are out there making copies of themselves? And there's so many existential level threats right now that aren't being even talked about at the government level. It's the old cliche of just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You know, that's what seems to pass for politics right now. And I think we could do better. You know, and I'm putting things together to figure it out.
I think one thing that has, particularly, you know, thinking about the Virginia election, one thing that has kind of stuck in my mind, Dan, over the last few months and also probably the last year, going back to the presidential election, is there's a lot of emotion being stirred up without facts behind it. Where, you know, I think one of the driving forces in the Virginia race was the idea of critical race theory, something that isn't even being taught in high schools, but you work folks up so much that, like, what are they teaching our kids? What are they teaching our kids? That there's an emotional reaction to that, that I guess red meat that they throw out there. So, like, is there a way to come back from that? Is there a way to kind of come back from the tribalism and the, I guess, the culture wars, to use a media term? Like, how do we come back from that?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm half Norwegian by genetics, and something I love Norway. Norway's doing all these things all the time that are just like, you know, Norway for the win. Like they've, for instance, they've gotten rid of the word race in their laws. They just use the word unfair discrimination because, you know, there really is just the human race, and we have different, you know, ethnic subtypes within it. We're technically all the same race. So even to use a phony word like that is kind of dog whistle, third rail, you know, red meat race baiting or whatever, you know. So, I mean, thank God Norway has, you know, they've stopped selling gas-powered cars, too. They just, it's like electric cars are the way to go. Like,
okay,
what's the deal? So, I mean, they're doing all these things that if only the rest of the world would start, like, copying the things they're doing, I mean, we could fix all kinds of crises very, very fast. But, you know, okay, the world's not going to become Norway overnight. So what are we going to do? You know, or maybe we wouldn't want it to be Norway overnight. You know, we have a beautiful, diverse planet with all kinds of subgroups and tribes and wonderful, you know, people with their own ideas of how to run societies. Look at the Amish. You know, they have this great society that they just want to be left alone, and they seem to do pretty good being left alone. I mean, I don't know if I would want to be raised in a Amish community, but you know, there's something called the genetic lottery. You know, we got here by someone once termed it, well, some of us slid out of a privileged vagina, you know. But we had no say in it, you know. Right. It's like we should just be okay, I happen to have this winnerhood status on the genetic lottery, but we're all here to take care of each other and help each other and advance the human experiment, the community. You know, if you take a spiritual viewpoint, we're maybe here doing dharma kind of work, you know, other beings become enlightened, and that could be, you know, I mean, these are questions that no one's got like hard scientific proof on, but you know, in the absence of that, I like to refer. I consider myself kind of a Christian transhumanist. Most transhumanists are kind of atheists, but I think the best thing in the Bible is Matthew 22:35. A lawyer was trying to trip up Jesus. He said, "Oh, what's the greatest commandment?" He's figuring out how I'm going to get him on this one. And Jesus is like, the first greatest commandment, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul. And the second, love thy neighbor as thyself. Yep. On these two commandments hang all the laws and all the prophets. So, you know, that's kind of like all the Bible you need right there, I think, you know, and it's probably all the law you need too. You know, we just loved our neighbor as ourselves. Boy, we could go a long way with that, couldn't we?
And I think that ties into, you know, we've been doing a series here at Stop Now where we've been looking at TED Talks and these TED circles. And one of the themes that we recently touched on was about being optimistic and being pessimistic. And something interesting that we talked about was how a lot of times people's views of themselves and like their circle around them is optimistic, whereas their views on the world outside of them is very pessimistic. And so, like,
my tribe is great. That tribe next door.
Yes, like we're gonna be fine, but the world is going to hell. Like, and so I think, like, when you talk to a lot of people, especially over the last couple of years, Dan, where we've all kind of gone through this collective experience with the pandemic, like, how do we get to a point where we can have hope or positivity, or is that even something realistic to expect of people given the current state of the world?
No, it's another great question. I mean, I hate to say that because it sounds like something, that every politician's, oh, that's a great question.
Yes.
Glad you asked that. And they're getting time to think about the question while they're putting that part out, right? So anyway, no, I think we've got an immense brass ring moment in human history that with the internet and digital technology. It's not going to last forever, probably, but if we take advantage of it, we can set up things like deep learning, location-based life coaching for soft power. I've got a thing in development. I call it Cuponomics, and QPON stands for Quality, Progress, Opportunity Nodes. Each one of us is like a node. Each one of us is a node, which means like a little point on a network of opportunities. And opportunities are also challenges. The character in Chinese is the same for opportunity and challenge, because they each hold each other. But if you're an optimist, call it an opportunity instead of a challenge. But either one is valid. Okay, and what we're trying to do is have continuous progress on these opportunities. It's like no solution that sits in one place is going to remain a solution for very long. Solutions have to be agile and resilient and flexible. And that's like, I call that quality progress. Okay, so quality progress, opportunity, networking. So basically, I'm working on it's not ready yet, but it's a very ambitious kind of app. And I want to make it open source, so I'm looking to get development partners in this. But you start with your own goals that you have for yourself personally. People make New Year's resolutions and then they forget them a few weeks later. And there's a workaround for that. There's something called a Ulysses Pact or a Ulysses Smart Contract. There's this whole world of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, the blockchain, DAOs, and we're really not using them, but they give you the freedom to write any kind of contract that you can imagine you can put on the blockchain. So let's say you wrote a contract with yourself. I'm going to work out for 3 hours this week. And if I don't, my smart contract is going to automatically donate $100 out of my checking account to a charity that I hate. I guarantee you're going to be motivated to work out for 3 hours, right? Or another thing that people could do if they're selling something, they could sell, well, I like people that are, want to go into space, which I think we need to become multiplanetary, because I'm totally on board with the idea that, the Earth is the cradle of mankind, but you can't stay in the cradle forever. So what I would like to do is give discounts to anyone else who's a spacer. Anything I'm selling, you're a spacer, and you can prove it on the blockchain. Boom, you get like 10% off or whatever off. I like to support ending inequality, or I want to support equity. So someone that's poor, I'll sell you my things for a percentage of your time. That you make $15 an hour, this costs 5 minutes of your time. You make $1,000 an hour, it still costs 5 minutes of your time. That's a way to price things on a sliding scale to reduce inequality. And so with a system like this life coaching, quality progress networking, you could create these coupons, which are actual verifiable nodes on the blockchain, to do anything you want, really, to support the kind of society you want to live in, to support the kind of people you want around you, to support the kind of things you want to buy or sell. I mean, it's really unlimited, and we should have it by now, it seems like. So I have the site qpon.info.
Okay.
I'm trying to develop this as part of the Permatrail project, which we can talk about later, which is permaculture everywhere and humane rights everywhere.
And it does to me feel like, you know, you mentioned earlier, like we're in this moment. And I do feel like we are so advanced in some ways as a society, but there's a lot of connections to the past, and not all of them are good, Dan. And so, like, I think, like, how, because, you know, I'll spend time with my nieces, and I've talked about my nieces on the program here a time or two, and the way they are and the way they interact with their peer group is, I think at once it's very hopeful and optimistic, but also there's a part of me that's like, that's extremely naive, kid, because that's not how the world works. And like, how do, you know, you're talking about all these great ideas and things that we could do to make a more equitable society, have a society that cares about the environment, have a society that, you know, is, you know, we right here, we talk a lot about human trafficking and, you know, people that are being abused and being victimized. And, you know, it'd be great to have something that solves these issues. How do we get there, though? Like, I think that's the thing that kind of stops a lot of people when they're thinking about the future, Dan.
Yeah.
It's like, we want things to be better, but we can't see outside of our current state.
Well, I know one thing. You got to make it fun. People don't do stuff that's not fun, right? So you got to gamify it. You got to add like the challenge, you know, challenge factor to it. There's a lot of ways to make things fun, and I don't think we've begun to explore those either, you know. So number one is make it fun. Number two is make it so it doesn't take up people don't have a lot of time. You know, they're kind of swamped already with what is going on in their lives, right? Yeah. But if something doesn't take too much time and it's kind of fun, yeah, they might make time for it. Number three is make it relevant. You know, I don't like the fact that there's 10 different gardeners going around with leaf blowers all different times of the week. You know, and I've gone on Nextdoor. Half my neighbors don't like that either. You know, and for instance, the city next door, Ojai, has banned them entirely. If you want to do landscaping, you need an electric tool. Okay. And in fact, that's now law in California. Small engines have to switch to phase out the gas-powered ones, and they're going to electric. It's a measured phase out, phase in kind of thing. But you know, so that was just like an example I pulled out of the air, but you know, something that people want to get done at the neighborhood level. And one way to do this that's not really used by the average person is you heard of a PAC, a political action committee? Yeah. Well, you know, it turns out it's like one of the least regulated things that you can start. You know, you don't even have to report it until you've raised $1,000. And then after you've raised $1,000, you fill out this little one-page form and you send it off to the Federal Election Commission. It's like, this is a PAC with this name. We want to do so and such. And, you know, but this is why we have a society where the corporations have taken all the power from the little guy. And they've you know, why have the CEO salaries are up something like 15,000 or 1,500%, you know, from when Reagan first got in. You know, it's like,
but they're creating jobs, Dan. That's what I've heard. They're job creators.
Oh, they're the job creators. But you know what? They're also the community destroyers. You know, the Walmarts, the Disneys. They're trying to make the whole world like a corporate idiocracy. You could say, if you've seen that movie. I think that's the end game. You know, for runaway corporatism.
That movie used to be a comedy. Now,
yeah, right.
It feels like a documentary.
Now it's filed in the nonfiction section of the Blockbuster. No one knows what Blockbuster is, but
yeah,
I grew up in the era of you know, VHS tapes that you could rent. You know, how old fashioned is that?
I think that speaks to a very specific part of our audience that can remember Fridays after school going by Blockbuster and picking up movies with your friends.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm turning 60 this year on the longest night of the year. The winter solstice is my birthday, actually. And you know, when I was born in 1960, the world had 3 billion people, and that seemed like a lot back then. Now it's pushing like 8 billion. and we're using up the resources of 4.5 planets if everyone's going to have a first world lifestyle. So this is not exactly going to work. We need to get the overview effect about the situation we're in, which is that's a name for the effect when astronauts were able to look back at the Earth. About 10% of them had this thing that was like a psychedelic experience, and this total shift in their cognitive awareness about how fragile, this little spaceship is. And Bucky Fuller called it a spaceship. He said, "There's no passengers; we're all crew on Spaceship Earth." So I could get off on a rant, as you can see. Did I answer that question at all?
I think you did, and it brought up another question for me as well in terms of voting, because that's been another big topic in the news for the last year or so. In terms of should we be making voting easier for people? As somebody who has ran for elected office, like what's your take on that, Dan? Like should there be more access to folks in terms of being able to get to the polls?
Well, I analyze governance from the standpoint of, is it coercive or is it voluntary? And, if you look at what government technically is, it's a group that has a monopoly on military force over a limited geographic area. Okay, so, is that the only way people can govern themselves? I don't think so. I mean, you might need that if you're getting invaded by aliens or the nation next door. But pretty much everything else, I think we can do without people hunting people down and putting them in cages. If they didn't happen to know about some law that they had no say in.
Right.
So we're going to transition to intentional communities, because those are the best meeting place between coercion and community. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of involuntary compliance probably to do things like defense and courts and maybe police, but I think defense and courts are probably the two biggest ones. But again, you could fund those with just renting out location value, or any kind of natural resource really shouldn't be owned monopolistically. It should be taxed, and then that tax should be used to fund, things you need for the commons, like defense and courts. And then let's use cuponomics. Let's use soft power. Let's use voluntary, proof of action protocols, which is actually a thing you can do for free right now online. It's called POAP.xyz. It's a proof of action protocol. This guy it's a souvenir you can make on any topic, but it proves that you participated in something or took action on something. So there's the infrastructure right there for, it's free, it's open source. If we started trading these proof of action protocols amongst each other and sorted them in a system that says, okay, this one I like, this one I don't like as much, this one I'm going to preferentially treat better, this one I'm not so much. But we don't need to resort to military force to do 99% of our governance. And that's how I would address. What was the question again? Voting.
Yes, right. Voting access.
Vote with your non-coercion. Vote with your voluntariness. Don't vote with your monopolized military force. That's what we should be voting with.
Yeah, and then go ahead, JK.
Can I jump in? So
sure.
This is what happens when you allow two broadcasters to do the show. They forget that others.
Are you in the bathroom, by the way, JK? You got like a reverb going on.
So, Dan, it's nice to talk to you. And what about the other projects that you have mentioned, right? About decriminalized nature and also Permaculture Trail. So, what are those concepts? And I'm trying to understand, so you have so much to offer. Is that what?
Yeah, well, that was what was the first one? Decriminalized nature, I think you
yes.
said. Oh, yeah, great slogan. And this is something that city councils have passed resolutions about. Giving access to medicinal plants. I think Oakland wrote a really comprehensive resolution telling the police not to put that high on their enforcement list. That those guys are doing some good stuff. You can leave them alone. But yeah, there's I read about this idea. That if you took all the trails in the world and just doubled their length, they would all be connected, and we'd have like a hiking trail that you could actually hike anywhere on Earth on. And I'm like, well, that shouldn't be too hard to do. Why can't we double all the trail lengths? And why not throw in some permaculture and some human rights while we're at it? So Permatrail, short for Permaculture Trail, and I got the domain permatrail.org. Right now, it just points to a couple of Facebook pages and groups about it. But I think this could become another thing like the Cuponomics. It's an open source idea to create maximum voluntary interaction with humans. It's basically very subversive, because if it works, we're not going to need we're going to have 99% of the military and politicians are going to be having to retrain for useful work. So I think we can do it by the 100th anniversary, actually, of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which it's coming up December 10th. In 1948, they signed this thing. It was that 30-article Universal Declaration of Human Rights at Trocadero's Plaza in Paris. Most of the nations agreed. It didn't really have the force of law, but it kind of did, because it's kind of set what are the norms for what we want to have. People have a right to life. They have a right to self-defense and freedom of movement and basic needs and free expression. And I think it's actually time to upgrade it from human rights to humane rights, because we've got a biosphere that takes care of us. And if we don't take care of it back, it's not going to be taking care of us for very long or very well. So, all these things I've been talking about, they kind of can fit into the Permatrail project. And we've got till 2048 to cut the ribbon on it. So, no hurry, but if it happens sooner, that'd be great. So start doing permaculture, start identifying permatrail friendly actions in your life, and we'll see what happens.
On that note, is it even really possible? Because our mission, like in Stop Now, we are fighting on modern slavery and human trafficking. You talked about the human rights, and how are we doing in that? In terms of United States, because it looks our social experiment itself proves, not to a large extent, but we just started. And we just see that so many millions of people still live in the modern slavery, and they are kind of forced into it.
Yeah.
In this labor
market.
It's
1/3 of the world is living in the so-called unfree world. But, even the 2/3 that calls itself free, aren't we living in the corporatized world? And, how free is that if we're being sold things that aren't good for us, and we're being, forced into lifestyles where we have to use 90% of our time to do things we don't like to get what we can't live without. There's got to be a better compromise between those two worlds.
And I think you're talking a lot about collaboration and community. That's what I hear from a lot of these initiatives that you're talking about, Dan. How important is that? Because I think
it's vital. It's not going to happen
getting back to politics. It's a lot about what can I do? But I think the we is maybe the more important question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of consider this as a big art project, actually. The Permatrail installation art, when it's all finished, I think it'll be the biggest installation art project that anyone's ever seen. And art is fun. Art is undervalued and underrepresented in our neighborhoods. I think if you talk to your neighbors about this as an art opportunity that can save them some money and give them some more fun and choice, I think who's going to disagree with that? One kind of unifying yard art thing is the sundial for the Permatrail, actually. The oldest scientific instrument that humans ever made is probably a shadow stick. We know that people were poking sticks in the ground maybe 100,000 years ago. Maybe it was for planting seeds. But at some point, someone left that stick and noticed the shadow, and then came back and noticed the shadow was over here now. And it got the gears spinning in their head. So it's kind of an interesting unifying historical thing. It's an art instrument. There's like all these artistic sundials around the world. It's a science instrument. You know, it shows you the relationship between the planets moving around. You know, maybe it'll bring some flat earthers back from the dark side. That's another thing that, I mean, there's really such a terrible anti-science conspiracy attitude loose on on the world, and I kind of blame the internet. You know, the internet has acted as this big echo chamber for people to spread, you know, weird ideas that aren't going to work very well.
There's so much information available, but there's also so much misinformation that is equally readily available out there. Really quick, Dan, before we wrap things up this weekend, we'd definitely love to have you back for part 2.
I'm not going away. Don't worry. I'm not suicidal either.
Yeah. Speaking about radio, because that's something that has been, radio and TV has been a big part of my life. You know, I've been broadcasting since 2000
Nice.
in one way, shape, or form. But I think, you know, even more so than the, you know, kind of attention, because I think at heart, I do like the attention of it. And the pay can vary at times, but I think the thing I love the most is just kind of what we're doing here in collaborating with different people and talking and having conversations. So how important is that aspect in your life? Just whether you're on the mic or whether you're out, you know, talking to people on your campaign trail, like how important is it just to have conversations these days?
Oh, you know, I heard somewhere a long time ago that the fastest way to increase your intelligence is to meet as many new people as possible. And I think that's really true. And I think it's also the fastest way to have a fun, rewarding life too. You know, one great thing about running for office, you know, as kind of a stress test candidate, you know, I'm not spending $80,000, you know, like the people that win the election. But you know what? I'm getting a longer public comment period. Like when they have a city council meeting, you got 3 minutes to talk about something. But hey, when you're running for office, you get invited to debates and forums, and you can talk to people. Say, hey, I'm running for office. You want to hear about this? You want to hear about that? And it's actually been a lot of fun. And I think it's kind of related to the radio thing. You know, I did a show called Radio Free Hemp from 1994 to 2000 at KUCI-FM. That's the little station associated with the University of California, Irvine. And that was the longest running, you know, nature decriminalization show in the history of Orange County, at least. You know, I'm sure people have done, but it was a great experience. I wish I had all the air checks. They were lost in like, you know, storage unit auctions when I was broke. But if anyone has them out there, I'd love to get in touch and hear some of those shows again. Because I got to talk to Jack Harrer and LV Musica and George Clayton Johnson, who wrote you know, Twilight Zones and Logan's Run and Star Trek. You know, he was on my second show, and he's gone now, but you know, his legacy lives on. But yeah, I guess we're both attention whores or hounds or something, right?
I'll say at some point, like, it might not be the main reason, but at some point that's part of the reason.
Definitely a factor in there, yeah.
Oh, but yeah, this has been a great conversation, Dan, and we definitely want to do it again. Before we sign off, again, I want to give you an opportunity to let the folks know what you're doing and where they can find you out here on these platforms to become a part of the conversation.
Permatrail.org will get you to my Facebook presence. Looking to make that better. Also, the QPON.info. I have also QPON.life, but I got to renew that one. But yeah, I'll be on your ballot hopefully in 2022 here in Thousand Oaks, California. I think we've got like 3 seats coming up, but if I just double my votes, like I said, if I just can put the ideas out there and keep doubling the votes, get on that exponential curve, because these exponential curves, these are what we're trying to get ahead of with better governance. And I feel optimistic about it. And there's no percentage in pessimism. Let's say that.
You hear that, JK? Like JK and I have had a back and forth over the last couple of weeks about optimism and pessimism. So I hope you're a little bit more optimistic this week, JK.
Certainly, Nate. So you are trying to pull me to your side. With that, like being said, like I can say thank you to Daniel, and
thanks.
We will meet again. And it's wonderful to talk to both of you.
And we can compromise on realism. How's that?
Yes, meet in the
Only
middle.
in the middle. So,
yes. So thank you to Dan. Thank you to JK. Thank you to everybody
live long and
watching.
prosper.
Bye for now.